I welcome you to another episode of the 52 Book Project. The book I'm reviewing today is by an author whose work I've admired for a long time. His name is Shashi Tharoor. The name of the book is India from Midnight to Millennium. It came out in 2006 to in the 49th year of the independence of India. As someone that is from India. It's a book that was quite eye opening. There were a lot of facts I already knew, but there was a lot of new information to process and reflect on as well. The five things that I picked up from this book. The first thing, there are 10 chapters in this book, and each chapter is focused on a larger theme. And in the first, one of the main things I picked up was the beauty of the diversity in a country like India. For instance, each state has can have its own language, its own rituals, its own political sort of infrastructure, and I think that diversity and how it comes together to form one large nation is really beautiful to see and makes me very proud to be an Indian. Number two, I think there's a chapter on non-resident Indians. As someone that grew up as a non-resident Indian, I think I really identified with some of the ideas presented there, especially this connection and the contribution of NRIs to the Indian economy in general. Um, in A lot of non-resident Indians leave their home country for better opportunities abroad, but they're constantly in touch with their home country. They send back a lot of money to their extended family. They constantly visit. They make investments, and I think they're a very important part of the larger contribution of that country to the world. And it's one of the countries that has really cherished and built on this NRI network. And wherever you go in the world, you can really tap into that network and feel that connection of being from a country like India again. Another thing that I thought about was the historical narrative of a country like India and how certain historical events can alter and change the course of a country. And in the book, the author talks about several events like um, the death of Lal Bahadur Shastri or um, the assassination of the prime minister, the opening up of the Indian economy in 1991. So these were some historical events that really shaped the country, and I think when you try to understand a country, it's very important to understand its historical development from a larger context, but also a much smaller context. And it made me reflect on how there are so many different historical events in India's history, from the Mughal Empire all the way to the British Empire, and then the history of independent India as well. Another book I'd recommend is the book by Ramachandra Guha, India Before and After Gandhi, and I think that's another series I really enjoyed about the political history of India that is connected to this book as well. I really liked the discussion about the chapter about how the Indian economy opened up in 1991 and what led to that point. And I think it's very hard for people born in a liberalized country after 1991. I was born in 1993, so I don't realize what benefits my parents were not able to access when they lived in a country that had just one main television channel or a few specific government brands to subscribe to and buy from. And I think the India we see today has so many choices, so many options, and a lot of it is because of the bravery of the policymakers in the early 90s to open up the economy, but also um, the economic need of it, where we really had to do it to pay off some international debt. I like recently I've been watching a lot of stories of Indian entrepreneurs making a mark on the world stage, and I think one of the things I really wanted to understand better was the history of business and entrepreneurship in the country. And I think at a more foundational level, it comes down to economics and how supply and demand work in a particular context. So, especially with big startups coming out of a country like India, whether it's Airbnb, I'm sorry, not Airbnb, whether it's Byju's or I off the top of my head, Lenskart, shows like Shark Tank that talk about um, the Indian startup sector and just that conversation around business. I think this book gives you a good foundation about some of the economic indicators that led to some of those developments right now. And I think creating a policy framework that supports and encourages business is really important in that context. Finally, I think overall this book, though it was published 15 years ago, just made me feel very bullish about India and its role in the development of the world. It's also a very heavy book to read. That's one of my points of feedback for the author is that sometimes it did seem a little academic and hard to follow, and I think it could have been broken down into more chapters, and there could have been a stronger connection between the themes as well. But I know the author has written other books about this topic, and I'd recommend reviewing those books as well after you read this particular book. Do subscribe to the channel. Thank you for listening to this review, and I hope you stay tuned for more such reviews from this channel.